Earlier this month, I took a trip out to Sandbach. A small group of people were standing outside of the Cheshire East offices there, and they were quietly protesting. They had their banners. There was a pile of waste material which had been deposited just to make the point that fly tipping, as a result of the closure some 18 months ago of the recycling depot, as we prefer to call it, or the waste tip, as many people call it, had come about. While I was there, I met Lesley Turner. Lesley was standing there with her placard, waving it. She has actually been doing a lot of positive work within the community to make sure that people are both aware of the situation, the implications of the closure of the, let's call it, recycling provision which we had in Congleton, and indeed what, as a community, we should be doing about it. Do tell me a little bit about how you decided to get involved and the petition that you actually started to organise.
Well, it was last year when something cropped up in the Chronicle to say that people in Congleton weren't too bothered about having lost their recycling centre, that it sort of enraged me, and I thought, this can't be. You can't get away with saying that people in Congleton don't care. We are at a disadvantage because we have to go to Macclesfield now, and that's not available to everybody. People without cars and things have got to solicit friends to take all the bits and pieces over to Macclesfield, and people are either accumulating stuff in their gardens, paying people to come and get skips and things, and they're not recycling as much as they would do if the tip was still there and you could pop in when you're going to Tesco's and drop off a few bits of electrical things on the way through.
And the other thing is, of course, that Cheshire East has got this commitment to use a popular phrase, saving the planet, but certainly to reducing the amount of CO2 that we're putting out. So on one hand, we've got this broad policy, which sounds very, very great, but in practice, people from Congleton have now got to do the 7 or 8 mile trip, certainly 15 miles round trip, to Macclesfield to do recycling. And it suggests to me that a lot of them, frankly, wouldn't bother.
I think that's true. I mean, when I started looking into this and finding out that there had been a report that had been prepared, and this gave you the RAP criteria for where you need a recycling centre. And even though the council had put this in their report, they weren't actually abiding by the 4 criteria. And they're supposed to be somewhere within 3 to 5 miles of the majority of people. And that isn't the case. The majority of Congleton are outside that 5 mile criteria. And the one that they've chosen is just a 20-minute drive. So they're assuming, A, everybody's got a car, and the traffic allows you to get there in a reasonable time.
In a reasonable time, and as we know, that particular road can get quite congested at times at certain points along the road.
Well, not only that, but working people don't have much of a choice when they go. They've got to do it at the weekend when the chances are that everybody else is doing exactly the same thing, and they're not going to do it in 20 minutes.
And
they're going to be sitting in a road queue, pumping out fumes and eating up the planet that way.
And in fact, with the Macclesfield site, they are in fact on quite a dangerous bit of road there. It's a relatively narrow road, it's on a slight ridge, and visibility is not ideal.
I don't think the signage is that good either, so it comes upon you quite suddenly.
It does.
And I can imagine that accidents could be formed that way, and the vision displays aren't that great either.
I mean, it's not a good site, and I must admit I've seen better sites in other parts of the country in terms of the way in which it's managed and everything else, but let's not worry about that. The fact is, it is a site that you can actually get to, but it's not without its problems. It needs some investment, frankly.
That's possibly true, but are they going to invest there, or are they going to allocate all of the waste sites around so that they do meet more of the criteria more of the time?
I think certainly as far as we're concerned in Congleton, then if money is tight, and we do recognise that Cheshire East has got quite a problem at the moment, then we would far rather that the, if you like, jam was spread a little bit more thinly and spread amongst the whole of the area, and was certainly not focused on a number of places, so you could have, to carry on the analogy, a thicker jam on your bread.
I think that's true. I think Congleton needs to raise the profile and say, we are a really large service town. Macclesfield is the next level up in terms of planning, but Congleton is a service town. And if they keep taking the services away, that's not right. It's not being a service town anymore.
So, can you recall what's the population of Congleton presently? And then we need to add to that the 3,500 new houses that are being built over the next 5 years?
The number that springs to mind is that it might get to 40,000 by the time the end of the period is up. So that's the sort of figure they should be planning.
Which puts us certainly in the second level in terms of importance in the structure.
Yes, I mean, there's no doubt that Congleton is a large town and it is growing. We're getting
fast.
more and more houses, and the facilities need to be there to support that.
And it's also surrounded by very, very attractive countryside. So we get this situation that if the facilities aren't there, then we can reasonably expect that the problems of fly tipping will accelerate over time.
You can imagine that, indeed, and the change in charging policy on the waste themselves will drive up more fly tipping too. But it's things like mattresses and people's dead lawnmowers and stuff that are just lurking in people's gardens that look so unsightly. The idea of fly tipping round the corner and tipping it over the edge of the roadside, I'm sure that's going to happen too, but it's more visible than that. Everywhere.
I've certainly seen that on the Link Road. I've seen several piles of masonry rubbish that have been casually tipped just right by one of the small roundabouts as well, where of course they're extremely dangerous. In fairness, it was picked up quickly, but nevertheless that's a cost, and I think the cost is probably about £1,500 per individual item of material dumped.
Well, when I was doing the petition, people in Tesco's were telling me that there are regular dumps of stuff that would have gone to the tip, but because they've got a certain amount of recycling in the car park, and people are leaving all of their would-be recycling for the tip in their car park, which they're dealing with without too much complaint at the moment, but you can see that'll wear a bit thin.
Yes.
And people in charity shops were saying that they're getting more and more low-end stuff that they really can't sell. They've got to take that to the tip themselves.
Yes.
So that's sort of filtering through and a burden on other people that hasn't been in the past. Mm-hmm. So not just fly tipping, there are other elements
as well.
Yeah.
So going back to your petition, you'd heard that people in Congleton were somewhat ambivalent about the issue, and
I couldn't believe it.
Well, you couldn't believe it, and I must admit, when you told me about it, I was extremely surprised as well, because the impression I get is that people in Congleton are very concerned about this, and they're really going to back any request for some new facilities. But what sort of support did you get in the petition, and how did you organise it?
Well, some friends of mine suggested I get onto Facebook and the Climate Action Group, and I then met Jackie Kay, who kindly helped put the petition on the internet so that people could vote online, which was a real boon. I thought, oh great, I don't have to do so much, this will all happen in the background. And we did get quite a few people on both petitions, and we went to the next council meeting in September, and we kicked up enough of a fuss then, pointing out that what the rules weren't being applied properly, and that a large town without being satisfied within the criteria. Mm-hmm. So we actually did get it put back on the agenda, and instead of saying Congleton doesn't matter anymore, it said Congleton must be specifically reviewed in terms of the waste strategy. And that's where we left it in September. And a working group was going to be set up with that remit to have a look. And the working group was being set up with the remit to actually look into Congleton specifically in terms of the recycling.
So that's where we were in last September, and I was at that meeting actually, and it was very self-evident that the political ground was shifting, that those who had made the decision originally that the site should be closed, for the reason that the lease that it had actually terminated and that the landowner was not prepared to renew that lease. That was the reason. But there was a bit of a political turnaround there which said, oh yeah, but we do recognise that Congleton actually is worthy of special consideration.
Yes, I'm not really up to speed on all of the politics because it's been going on for a long time, and when the lease was sold for the existing recycling site, that was a long time ago. There's a lot of political history, and in a way I'm just starting from where we are.
Indeed.
We are a town of a certain size, and the nearest recycling centre is too far away to be compliant with the RAP guidelines, and we should be pressing to get something better than that. And in the meantime, we need to be pressing for pop-up facilities because it's going to take a long time to unravel and get to a position where everybody is satisfied.
So I take it from that you're saying that though you're optimistic that we will get a positive outcome to this, it might be a long and sustained battle, if you like, or at least a long sustained campaign.
I believe that, yes. It's not going to happen overnight. They're not going to just say, oh, let's put it back where it was, because that site's not really available. It's going to be a Costa Coffee or something else, but I suspect it won't go back to being a recycling centre long term. There's always a possibility that they find the opportunity to put a small-scale pop-up facility there to relieve us of our problems at the moment. But yes, it's got to be a long-term plan, and with the squeeze on the money, you can see it's not going to happen just like that. And
as they say on mainstream radio and television, other sites are available.
Well, I've been trying to work out that the reports going back did identify various sites, some of which you think, well, time's marched on and there's more housing going up and making it less likely that these sites are going to be suitable. But they're still safeguarding some sites in the mineral and waste strategy. So that's a relief, because it didn't look like that was going to be happening. It should have happened a long time ago.
Yep.
In fact, the site that was there, the recycling site we were using, should have been safeguarded for waste management and not allocated for Costa Coffee.
You might say it ought to have been part of the local plan, which is just going through its examination in public.
If only we had a local plan that had all of these things in, yes. It's a question of, we've got to start from where we are. If only we'd done all of this stuff before, it would have been great.
So you started by saying that, in fact, let's call it a rumour, had been put around that Congleton was quite ambivalent when it came to the loss of a site, but presumably your petition that you organised suggested the contrary.
Well, quite. I just went door to door because I don't know how online petitions really work, but I thought if I went door to door and handed out the QR code that we had, courtesy of Jackie and her team, so I was going door to door, there were very few people who didn't positively want to get involved and say, yes, come on, we do miss it. What are we supposed to do? Going to Macclesfield isn't that easy, and people are just putting more and more stuff in the landfill rather than doing the recycling bit that everybody'd like to do.
And this is the important thing, isn't it? That I've heard this thing that, in 50 years' time, we shall be digging out tips because the tips have actually got so much valuable material which has been dropped in them, whether it's scarce metals, whether it is lithium, which can be extracted from them, that we will actually be mining these tips to get the materials that we need to sustain life in 2050.
Yeah, I wasn't over impressed with being told to put all my my printer cartridges in the landfill. I thought that was outrageous. But they don't have the facility to recycle them at Macclesfield, so that's what they did with them.
It's the easiest thing is to stick them in a hole and worry about the problem. I'm not saying that those sites aren't managed, where they're eventually dumped do have to conform to some strict environmental standards, but at the end of the day, if it's in a hole, you can forget about it. And it's a lot more difficult to actually do what we should be doing, which is to maximise the potential of our waste in terms of recycling.
Indeed, yeah. Anything we can do. And we're supposed to be putting in shops and recycling sites so that we actually reuse the bits that are reusable and find new homes for them.
Yeah.
So that's the way to go, but I don't think that's been...
One of the places where that is being done at the moment is at the old sawmill, isn't it? That they have a group of gentlemen there that delight in the process of turning things back into useful objects again and have the skills to do it. Well, mainly cycles I've seen there. They do a great job of renovating cycles, but I'm sure they do other things as well.
The sawmill is a great asset. I think they were collecting spectacles and bras last time I took anything to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they're going to keep their eye open for more opportunities to recycle as best you can. But yeah, it's a really good opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, the spectacles I get, I presume a lot of that was because we've got countries elsewhere where these are actually required and can be reused, so that basically they are being reused in other countries that need the most.
I didn't ask him what he was doing with the bras.
Well, I was avoiding the question as well, I must admit, but there we are. Yeah, but the fact is, they are recycling. They are looking at the objects that which we no longer think we have a use for and saying, yeah, but we do have a use for them.
Indeed. In terms of collecting the petition itself, it was great going door to door and actually meeting people and having a chat with them. And you learned a lot about the area doing that. We didn't just talk about recycling, but other issues as well. Gritting of roads, that was another big one.
I mean, I have done a certain amount of campaigning, which was political campaigning. We won't go in there, but that physical going and knocking on somebody's door and introducing yourself and asking them what their opinion is still a very, very effective way of understanding what communities' needs are, isn't it?
Indeed, and I think there's only one person who gave me a negative response before I actually opened my mouth. So he wouldn't necessarily say he didn't want a recycling centre, but yeah, very, very few people were negative at all. Some people obviously were busy and couldn't do very much but take the QR code, but it certainly boosted both the online and the paper petition. We ended up with over 1,000 handcrafted signatures and 1,400 or so on the website. So we put that together with the previous petition that was carried out and ended up with over 6,000. So well done, Congleton.
That is a no mean achievement, isn't it?
Well, especially as you know that this was out of some comment or other saying that we weren't bothered. It's not as if we were trying to close, to save anything specifically on that date. It was a general, no, we are bothered. And we've got to keep up the pressure to keep the politicians focused on giving us what we need.
Well, there's a very good way to be doing that, isn't there? Because we've got elections coming up in May, both at county level and at local level. And for Congleton, we've got people standing for the town council, we've got people standing for Cheshire East. How effectively can we make the views of these 6,000 Congleton residents known, and more importantly, ensure that the people that are going to take the decisions are the people that recognise the need and are prepared to press for it?
Well, I think there are two levels of this. If people in Congleton keep mentioning the fact that we don't have a recycling centre and we really should have a recycling centre, and any fly tipping that's happening can be attributed to this, the whole level of awareness will go up. And then when you're voting, you want to make sure that the people you vote for are positively inclined to try and make something happen and not just wait for somebody else to take those decisions away from you. So yeah, you need to quiz your politicians, your councillors, make sure that they're on board with trying to find a new recycling centre for us.
And if they are putting out any form of manifesto or statement of what they are doing, then read it carefully and then consider how you're going to use your vote. I mean, that's the formal part of democracy. The other part of democracy, of course, is the freedom to express views publicly in the newspapers of what people think.
Indeed, and no doubt the councillors will be out and about waiting for you to tell them on your doorstep. So
well, we hope they will. Even that is becoming a minority exercise these days, as far as I can see.
Well, I can recommend it. I think they should get out there and knock on a few doors.
It's quite, well, of course they should, campaigning should be about shoe leather, actually, and wearing it out.
I've not had no complaints about the councillors that I've come across in my exercise to date. Everybody's been very supportive, and I think that's probably why the team has taken it on board and it was added back into the agenda.
Yeah, so I think we can name those councillors that are being particularly active because they are effective allies in getting a definite decision taken in this rather interim situation that we are.
Well, Robert Douglas has got to be seen as the chief campaigner. He's been out doing meeting after meeting and knocking on people's doors, so he's well on the campaign. And
he's a town councillor at the moment, but I think I'm right in saying he's going to be standing for Cheshire East as well as the town council in May.
I believe so, and Robert Morton, he's actually on the working group, and he is part of the Cheshire East.
And we've also got Susie Akers-Smith, who is now vice chairman on the committee.
Yep, she chaired her first meeting, I believe, on the 2nd of February, so well done, Susie. Keep up the good work. Make sure Congleton gets mentioned as often as possible.
Even if you can't win on the footpaths issue, and that's a separate issue with this issue of the day crossing and the West East Greenway, then let's hope that collectively you can actually keep this issue very much where everybody can see it and keep it moving forward. And the last thing we want to do is have it buried along with the refuse in the ground, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah, we want to see some progress, and I think we should have a bit more transparency. It was very difficult to tell how far the working group had got. I had hoped that I might actually be asked to be on the working group, because as an architect I've come across various projects for waste and recycling down in London and for Stoke-on-Trent, so it's not as if I don't have any experience of what's required.
Yes, I think if we go back to the September meeting, there was some discussion there about actually involving some people who were from the community who had a degree of knowledge and actually having them as part of that study group.
Yes, I don't know whether I'm seen as an irritation or a resource. We shall find out.
Well, yes, I must admit, if you're a member of the community that is prepared to get out there and actually expend some energy on finding what people think and then building up a campaign, then I can understand it why certain people are going, well, is that person going to be a benefit? But what we lack these days, and you see it over the whole of sort of social media, is a lack of knowledgeable fact. We're increasingly living in a society where people believe rumour and unsubstantiated statements. And so what politicians need to help them are people that understand the issue, understand possible solutions, and are prepared to spend some time to make positive suggestions to them. That's part of local democracy.
Indeed. I think I'll be prepared to get involved. I'm just waiting for the call. If anyone wants me on the working group, I'm here.
Well, hopefully there are people listening to that. I know that a number of those people do actually regularly contribute to Congleton Radio, and I think those are probably the ears that you already enjoy, and they listen to you and are prepared to speak out. But yeah, absolutely. Let's see a positive move forward with this working group or whatever it's being called, and some feedback, please. Please tell these 6,000 people what you are doing, what your timescale is. A broad-scale consultation on the future budget for Cheshire East is fine, but it doesn't really tell us whether what we believe is a positive offer to reevaluate the situation is actually being followed up and how long we have to wait. You said earlier you're not optimistic that we will get a long-term solution in less than 10 years and possibly longer, and that we might be diverted by the idea of a sort of temporary pop-up solution, but surely Congleton deserves more than that.
We do deserve a proper facility, but in the meantime we should be pressing for some pop-up facilities. I think the biggest issue I see is the waste electrical, because they're small-scale bits and pieces that should have a home, that we should be able to drop off somewhere. And at the moment, you've got to have a special trip to go to Macclesfield, and that's just not green.
So might it be that we should have a fourth bin, which is electrical goods, or maybe we reconsider the green bin and the future of the green bin?
I don't think it'll come to that. I think some nice retailer could take on the challenge of finding somewhere to stick your waste electrical and processing it for us. When I spoke to Susie Acker-Smith, she sort of said, well, you can take it to Curry's. I said, I don't think we've got a Curry's in Congleton.
I don't think you've got a Curry's in Congleton, it's down the road. It's interesting you should say that, because the other day I needed a large quantity of bubble wrap, and if you've seen the price of bubble wrap recently, it is absolutely skyrocketed. It's an expensive commodity, so I thought, I know, I'll go to Curry's. And I'll ask Curry's whether they've got lots and lots of it, and they said, I'm awfully sorry, but we've had an instruction from on high that we've got to recycle every single part of it ourselves and make use of it when we're actually delivering products. So they are doing some recycling, but not perhaps receiving it from the public.
I must admit, I've seen some alternatives to bubble wrap, that crushed up concertina cardboard stuff, which is brilliant. I don't know where you can get hold of that.
Yeah, and of course that will rot away with a limited release of CO2.
So unless you're trying to just take the pleasure of popping all the bubbles on a bubble wrap, it's got to be a thing of the past.
Yes, it has indeed. So, what are the next steps?
Well, we've lodged our petition, so I don't have any need to go knocking on people's doors. Although I felt really guilty that I haven't done Congleton wholesale. It's only small areas, so we've managed to actually knock on everybody's door. So I can only apologise if you were hankering after putting your name down and you didn't, because nobody came to collect it. So the next step is just keeping on top of the councillors and keeping it in the public eye, making sure that somebody's trying to think where this new facility is going to go.
So is that going to be actually asking individuals to keep sending in letters to the Chronicle? Because the Chronicle, to its credit, is very, very good at publishing as many of the letters as it's got space for.
Make your feelings known in any way, shape or form. And I wouldn't advocate fly tipping, but if you want to go to the town hall asking questions, where can I take this piece of electrical goods, then it might wake a few more people up. Yeah, I don't know. And if there's any retailers out there who think they can actually help out with a pop-up facility, that would be another step forward. And just making sure people in the Chronicle can make sure we all know where the facilities that we do have are. And if the sawmill have run out of bras and spectacles, then the more people that know about that, the better.
Yeah, we've got to be better at recycling those objects which have a potential value.
I think there are various fairs coming up where the Climate Action Group will be out disseminating the right information about where we can go and what we should be doing next.
So, in terms of contacting people, if somebody listens to this today and they think Lesley's right about this, and what's more, I want to get involved, because I want to be as inspired as you have been to do something positive, is it best to sort of keep an eye open for the Climate Action Group through their Facebook page? How is the best way in which they can continue to be involved and then hopefully offer to do something themselves? Because it's only really by community being active that it gets an effective voice and we get things changed.
There is a page, if that's what you call it, on Facebook, which is to do with the waste and recycling centres, which has been set up under the auspices of Climate Action Group, and Olga Whitmore, I believe, is keeping that up to date. And that's got a lot of news as to where the fly tipping's been worst, where new recycling centres are likely to be. So yeah, anybody who's interested can get involved on Facebook.
So just go onto Facebook and search for Congleton Climate Action Group, and that should take you to their page.
I'm sure I should tell you where this website is. If after this meeting I'll tell you what you have to search for, but once you've done it, you just put it in your favourites, don't you? And you can go there.
I've been to a couple of the meetings, actually, and it's some good free warmth, actually. And there are lots of committed people there are prepared to talk to you. That's an enjoyable experience in itself. And you suddenly realise, you know what, I can make a difference. All I had to do was turn up and be available.
Yes, and talking about warmth, we're trying to get a new warm hub set up in Parnell Square. So if you were getting cold. That's still to be sorted out. I think...
or you can go to the old sawmill, which...
Kay Wesley has been doing that, and she's been involved with the recycling as well.
Which is, Kay being another of the town councillors, has been very active in...
Indeed, yes.
Supporting community response.
So that's another thing that you can do. You can look up your town councillors and or the prospective ones and quiz them about their attitude towards waste and see whether we can get them on board.
I guess that's the headline thing, isn't it, for the next few months? We're halfway through February now.
Use your vote.
We're actually travelling fast towards May elections. And they are important. They're important locally. They're important because we live in a democratic society. If people don't use their vote, then they can hardly complain about what they get, can they?
This is true. I don't think people realise how much hard work the councillors do. I think they are much maligned because they only get to hear about the things that have gone wrong. But in fact, they are hard-working, under-resourced people who need all the support we can give.
And they certainly don't do it to line their own pockets because the remuneration they get is minimal in terms of the number of hours they put in.
Indeed.
That is a popular rumour, I know.
What, that it's well remunerated? Oh dear. No, I think you can disseminate that one.
It's not, is it?
No.
By and large, those people do it because they care about their local community and they want to make a difference in it.
Indeed. I think that's the only reason why anybody would do it because, yeah.
I mean, whether that means that a member of the public actually has to sit through an entire full town council meeting is perhaps arguable, but they are interesting places to go to because you see how the process works, and most people don't understand that anyway.
I think it is interesting, although you can listen to them online. I think there's Cheshire East website you can download these meetings, so if you want to try and unravel a few issues you've got to listen quite carefully.
So let's leave there with a new concept that we have a whole channel which is about binge listening to Congleton Town Council full meetings. So that sounds like fun. It's an alternative to watching Happy Valley.
I think it's torture. I think even my new hearing aids are probably struggling to unravel exactly what's being said.
That sounds good, doesn't it? Anyway, Lesley, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. It's so good to see somebody in the community that hasn't just complained about the situation, but has been prepared to get involved and to make a difference. That is what society is about, and that's the spirit of Congleton. So you are a splendid example of the sort of person that has come to the area and is now committed to make a difference in it. And obviously you've got supporters that are working with you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the people who have helped. It's been fantastic, and the more people who come out the woodwork, the better.
So next stage, I guess, as we stand at the moment, is to wait and see what the elections bring to us. After that, we will have the next Environment Committee meetings, which happen, I'm not sure, is it once every 3 months, something like that. You can actually find out what's on the agenda by going online on Cheshire East for that particular committee and see what issues are going to be raised. Certainly a presence at meetings I think is helpful in just reminding councillors that this is a live issue. We can always all meet up in the coffee shop afterwards and chew the cud, can't we, and say how we felt it went, but that's a social activity in itself.
Indeed.
So thank you very much for your time, and if you're listening out there, don't just take this as a little bit of news, take it as a call to action. Get involved if you care about this issue. Join Lesley and let's make sure that we get a result. And personally, let's make sure we get a result in less than 10 years. Thank you.